Hello and welcome to this channel where I show you how to play board games. Today I'll show you Cascadia by Flinn, published by AEG, Game of the Year 2022 in Germany, for 1 to 4 players, 30 to 60 minutes, and age 10 and up. The aim of the game is to build a natural habitat for different animals just the way they like it. Here's an example of what the board could look like at the end of the game. You have many tiles with different landscape types on them. Your goal is to connect large areas of the same type, because for each tile in that large connected area you get points. For example, here for the woods you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points. In addition, for the largest area of a type among all the players, you'll get extra points. Furthermore, for the animals, you get points depending on if you could place them in the way they like it. For each animal, there's a scoring card that explains to you how many points you get depending on how you place those animals. Now let's set up the board and then I'll show you how it's played. First, we take the animal tokens, put them in the bag, shuffle the bag, put the bag aside. Then we take these landscape tiles, turn them around, remove a certain number depending on players, shuffle them and place them in piles on the side. Next, every player gets a starting tile. The starting tile is a combination of 3 tiles together. Since all starting tiles are different, we turn around, we shuffle them and hand out one to every single player. We then take the pine cones and put them on a pile next to the board. Then we pick up 4 landscape tiles from the piles and turn them around and place them like so. We also take 4 animals out of the bag and place them next to a landscape tile. And finally, we take the scoring cards, and for the first game it's recommended that you take the game cards that have a small A on the bottom right, and you put those next to the game so that everybody can see them during the game. Now let's have a look at the cards. First, we're going to look at the landscape tiles. Some of the landscape tiles can have 2 different landscapes on them, some others only have 1. Then you see that there can be a different number of animals on them, from 1 to 2 or even 3. Now let's have a look at the scoring cards. First, we'll have a look at the salmon cards. As we had said before, the salmon scores in chains. So the longer the chain, the more points you get. Here in brown, you see the number of animals that have to be in the chain, and in green you see how many points you score with them. So for example, if you have 5 salmon in a chain, you get 16 points. Next is the fox. The fox likes to be surrounded by different kinds of animals. The more different types of animals you have around it, the more points you get. Then we have the bear. The bear likes to be in couples. The more couples you have on your board, the more points you score. Should you have 3 couples of bears, you get 19 points. And then we have the deer. Unlike the salmon, who likes to be in crooked chains, the deer likes to be in straight lines. If you have 2 deer in one straight line, you get 5 points. For 3 in one line, you get 9 points. And so on. And finally we have the buzzard. For each buzzard that you have that doesn't have another buzzard around it, you get points. For 6 buzzards that are flying solo, you get 18 points. Now that we know all the cards, we can get started. On your turn, you can take a pair of a landscape tile and an animal token. You can only take pairs that are lying next to each other. You can't just pick and choose between tokens and tiles the way you wish. You take your pair And you must now take your landscape tile and add it to your habitats that you've already have. Here I only have the starting tile, but that's okay. I'll put my swamp right next to another swamp. Or I put it there, which is also next to a swamp. If I want to, I can even put the swamp next to the lake. What I can't do is I can't add a tile on a corner of another tile. There's always an edge that has to be the same. Now let's say I place it there. Next, I can, but I don't have to, place my animal token. The animal token doesn't have to be placed on the tile that we just added, but it has to be placed on a tile that doesn't have an animal token on it yet, and it has the symbol of the animal on it. I place it right here. If I didn't want to place it, I will put it back in the bag. Now let's say I had preferred to take this other pair, this one, because this landscape tile fits so nicely between mountain and lake there. And I have a salmon. I have a single salmon there in the lake that has a pine cone next to it on the icon. Now, should I put my salmon on this tile? Because of the pine cone that is also on that tile, I can now go and grab a pine cone and take it and put it in front of me. You will realize that it's difficult to find a good balance between finding tiles with landscapes that increase the size of the landscapes that you already have, and at the same time getting an animal with it that also increases the scores of these animals. Most of the time the pairs don't really match so well. After I've played my landscape tile and decided if I want to place my animal token or not, I refill the board with a new landscape tile and a new animal token. And then it's the next player's turn. When it's my turn again, I can select my next pair. Here I choose this one with the swamp and the forest because I already have this. It fits really well down there. And I always like bears, because bears give lots of points when you have two of them. Now because I have a pine cone, I could have played differently. Because the pine cone actually allows me to not take a pair that's next to each other, but take a random combination of landscape tile and animal token. So for example, I could have taken this tile and the buzzard and added it to my board. I have to return the pine cone for that. I can also use the pine cone to replace animal tokens. So let's say I don't like these animal tokens that are lying around here. I can return my pine cone, take away the animals that I don't like, the two bears and the buzzard in this case, then refill the board with 3 new animals and return the old 3 animals into the bag. In the rather unlikely case that you have 4 animal tokens that are the same, you have to replace them all. You take them all away, you place 4 new ones there. In the slightly more likely case that we have 3 times the same animal on the board, the player whose turn it is can then decide to take those 3 animals away and put 3 new animals on the board. You can only do this action one time. If you still don't like what comes afterwards, and even if it's 3 times the same animal again, then you have to pay a pine cone to do it. The game ends once there are no more landscape tiles to fill up the board. Then we start scoring. Now let's summarize your turn. First, you decide if you want to replace some of the animals. That is, if you have a pine cone. Should you have a pine cone, you can return a pine cone to the pile and exchange some of the animals. Next, you decide which pair of landscape tile and animal token you want to take. If you don't want to take any of the pairs, you can again use one of your pine cones to get any combination you want. Then you have to add your landscape tile to your habitat, and you have to decide if you want to, but you don't have to, place down your animal token there too. Then you refill the board with a new landscape tile and a new animal token. And it's the next player's turn. Now, let's tally up the scores and see who has won. This could be my potential board at the end. Here we take the scoring sheet, and now we go through first of the animals, and then we go through the different landscapes. We start with the bear. The bear wants to be in pairs, so we check on our board how many pairs we have. We have 2 pairs on our board. 2 pairs is 11 points, we write down 11 points. Next, we go to the deer. The deer likes to be in straight lines, and we have to count how many animals are in straight lines. In our case, we have 1, 2, 3 straight lines with 2 deer each. 2 deer in a line is 5 points. We have 3 of these lines, which is 15 points. And then you continue with the salmon, the buzzard, and the fox. For the landscapes, we first have to check which one of the mountain areas is actually our biggest one. In our case, it's the one with the 4 tiles there. Should we have the biggest mountainous area of all the players, we get an extra 3 points. In certain games, depending on how many players are playing along, you get 1 point for the second biggest area. It is important to note here that areas are only connected if they're connected across a tile. So for example, this swamp here is not connected to the rest of the swamp because it's only connected across this corner. It would have to go across the tile, otherwise this tile just doesn't count. So we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles that are swamp. We now go through all the different landscape types. Then we sum those up. We also add points for every single pine cone that we still have in our hand, and that gives us the final score. The person with the highest final score wins. And here are a few hints for your first game. Make sure that you check out the animals properly. The animals in the end give you most of the points, but you can't really focus on all 5 animals at the same time. You'll have to work with probably just 3 of them, and make sure that these 3 that you chose are the ones that give you lots of points. So really add up whatever you can for those 3. Most people like to go for the salmon because it looks like it's going to give you the most points, but that usually leads to a fight and somebody's going to be left out. But it doesn't really matter so much. All the other animals can also give you lots of points. But what I realize is that most of the time new players completely forget to check out their landscapes, to make sure that their landscapes are large enough that they get extra points for them. That's usually where the game is won or lost, because in the end, the landscapes will decide the game. There are also a few extra rules that you could play with if you want to. For one, there is the option to use a more simple scoring card like this for beginners, where all the animals are scored the same way. Works well for kids. If your kids are advanced, then you also have an advanced version of these rules before you move on to the 5 different scoring cards for the 5 different animals. There are also different challenges in the rule book that you can look at, where different scoring cards in different combinations can be played together to make it a little harder. And then finally, there's the solo version that you can play by yourself. That works almost the same as the regular game. You also place down 4 landscape tiles and 4 animal tokens, and you have your starting tile. You then pick your pair of cards and token, and you add it to your habitat, both first the landscape tile and then if you want to the animals. But instead of filling the board, you first take out the pair that's closest to you, replace it with the 2 that are still left on the table that you pull closer to you, and refill the board from the back. The rulebook will also explain to you how to score in a single game and what score is considered a good score. That's it. Thanks for watching and enjoy the game.